Screen Time salutations to all you internet dwellers out there, and welcome to another episode of Screen Time Continuum. I am Nick, and I am joined, as always, with Keelan. What is going on, man? Happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday indeed. Happy Sunday with a question mark. Yeah, okay, Sunday.
Absolutely. Yeah. How's everybody going? You good, man?
Yeah, man. I can't complain at all. It is something. Excuse me. It is something very unique about this particular summer, and I feel like I have to mention it every single episode. These last few at least, but until it ends, this heat wave is insane. I feel like we've changed time zones.
Yeah, it's pretty muggy today. As you can see, I'm well glistening already. Thank you guys so much for tuning in with us tonight. We hope that you have a wonderful night, or whenever you're listening to this. Tonight, we're going to be taking one of your guys' suggestions. So, a few weeks ago, we reviewed a movie called RRR on Netflix, and that video of our review really took off. And we thank all of you guys for watching it if you have watched it. And we really enjoyed that movie. And I think what we enjoyed the most, besides the movie, was your guys' suggestions for other movies for us to watch. And we really like that you guys engaged with us and gave us some suggestions. And we wanted to make sure that we recognized that you guys were engaging with us, because we love that. We're very appreciative of that. And so one of the top recommendations in that comment section for RRR was this movie on Amazon Prime called SARDAR UDHAM. And I saw it recommended at least 4 or 5 times. And so I told Keelan, we got to watch it. We definitely got to watch it. And we got to see what all the fuss is about. And I'm very glad to say that thank you for the recommendation, because, I think this was a good recommendation. But I'm not going to give my first impressions first. I'm going to give that away to Keelan. Keelan, Sardar.
But you had already started. What do you mean?
Yeah. You know what? I'm going to give you a second, because I'd like to give some of the pedigree of this movie for everybody watching out there. So it was released in 2021, and it was directed by Shujit Sircar, and it stars Vicky Kaushal, Sean Scott, and Stephen Hogan. Among others are Amal Parashar, Benita Sandhu, and Christy Averton. So yeah, Keelan, Sardar Udham, how did you feel about it? First impressions? Let us know.
I thought this movie was amazing. I definitely appreciate the suggestion. It's an introduction, for me at least, into a different world of foreign film. We've seen, I think RRR gave us that, what we're kind of used to. We're always used to seeing the playful, kind of slapstick comedy, go over the top type of films come from different places to America, and those are the movies that are usually promoted to us heavily. Even when I first started typing up this movie, looking for it, it's pretty well covered over here. If you're looking for something different, if you're looking for film, you're bound to see this trailer roll across you. So with that alone, just that alone, it changed the temperature of what I was thinking. Like I can't say that I've never thought that, there's different types of film around the world. I mean, I know that for a fact. But I can honestly say that sometimes I wonder what it's like to be in another country that doesn't have some of the liberties as America, and be able to speak out about revolutionaries and activists and people who actually meant something to the moral clause of the land. And this definitely let me know, like, oh no, it's out there. You just have to go look for it. So that is the first part of my first impressions. And then the back end of my first impressions is the film itself. It was very well done. I enjoyed it. I am not familiar with the source material, or as mentioned in the movie, even the massacre that it's kind of centered around, the heart of everything that kind of began this whole journey. I wasn't familiar with any of that. I feel like maybe I had heard of it, but I'm going to go out here on a limb and say I for sure had not. And yeah, I learned some things I definitely want to look deeper into. And aside from that, um, I think the story was told to a level of which I think this movie in a few years it could be like a Scarface type of a movie. And I use Scarface as an example just because of sales and how it took off much later than it was released. It hits the right circle of people who, kind of understand the messages. I think this movie could go really far, and I know it's already in the millions of views on Amazon.
Yeah, definitely. I too enjoyed this movie. Again, I think when I see like a 3 hour long movie, I get a little bit scared because I'm used to sort of Western movies. And that's why I'm really kind of appreciative that we're getting these suggestions and that we can kind of branch out a little bit too. Because, I mean, for what it's worth, I'm definitely conditioned towards Western movies. Um, and so it's nice to see a different perspective. It's nice to see a different type of storytelling, and I thought that was all really refreshing. I think the story itself tells is really good at keeping you engaged, and I think that might be a little bit different to the movies that I'm used to. When something's like 3 hours long here, I'm like, ugh, yeesh. I don't know if I want to sit for that long to
When,
watch that.
when something's 3 hours long here, you're gonna get a multitude of two things over and over. You're gonna
Right.
get a semi love story. You're gonna get a whole bunch of action, and then you're gonna get some boring dialogue, and that's gonna happen about 3 times once each hour.
Hmm. Yeah, and so I was, a little bit apprehensive, obviously, but I think this movie tells the story well enough. I didn't find myself bored. I don't even think that there was even any moments where I thought that it didn't need to be in the movie. So I was very surprised about the utility, and how they used the time that they had. And obviously, towards the end of the movie, things really kick off in a very dynamic way that you don't expect. So it keeps you enthralled for that tail end as well. I thought the gentleman who played, let's see, I need to get his
Udam.
name right. Yes, the gentleman is named Vicky Kaushal. I thought he
Mhm,
did very, very well. I think he's kind of a really, um, he's got a good presence. He's got a good face,
mhm,
and he definitely kind of can act without speaking, which I like.
right.
So yeah, I was pleasantly surprised. I enjoyed this movie, and it was interesting to see a piece of history, a piece of storytelling, a piece of sort of political commentary, set in a very interesting time period too. You have the rise of fascism, you have the rise of communism, you have the struggles between the British Empire and the Indian people. All of that stuff's boiling up, so it creates a lot of intrigue and a lot of suspense, which I thought they executed really well. So yeah,
Yeah,
those are my first impressions.
for sure. Um, yeah.
I
So
think I could give
rolling.
like a what we should do is maybe I'll just give like a little synopsis and then we can just start talking.
Yeah, yeah,
Just so
yeah, yeah.
that people know the little blurb. The blurb is that this is a biopic detailing the 2 decades that Punjabi Sheikh revolutionary Udham Singh spent planning the assassination of the man responsible for and I'm going to try to pronounce this, for the Jallianwala Bagh massacre.
Yeah.
And that was in 1919 when that took place.
Jallianwala Bagh.
Yes. And so basically, this movie details this man's story of sort of revenge. I mean, it's a very slow burn. It's not even really revenge. He's hell bent on being a revolutionary for his people. And
Mhm,
so it's basically the story of that. And I do guess way we can kick this off is the way the story is structured.
mhm.
There's a lot of sort of flashbacks and telling the story in retrospect that I thought was kind of interesting. I don't know about you, but seeing the assassination within like the first 25 or 30 minutes of the movie, I was like, oh, well, all right, where are we going to go from here?
I Yeah, I thought that was brilliantly done. It reminded me of two movies specifically, JFK
Mhm.
and the OJ Simpson movie, or the OJ Simpson story, excuse me, which is the full name of the movie. But both of those movies kind of began by giving you, I think even American History X did that, but both of these were the two I mentioned are more about telling stories about events, right? Um, both of those stories kind of start giving you the worst of the situation, like just starting you off in the bloodbath, so to speak, and one very literally. Um, and then from there, you break down the root, the cause, the structure of how you got to that situation and what happened after that situation.
Mhm.
But that's what that reminded me of. It a lot of things in this movie made me think I don't know if it's the director, the producer. I mean, I know quite a bit about film, but sometimes I'm not quite sure who puts what portions into motion. But the person who did the storyboarding for this movie, I would almost assume they have experience working in Western movies,
Oh
or
yeah.
they or at least studied. I'll say I'll go that far. Actually, I'll say at least have studied. And I think that's universal that we all study each other's work.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot to really there's a lot to this story, so I don't know that we're going to be able to talk about
Mhm.
each element and each
I know we won't.
plot point definitely because it's really jam packed with a lot of information.
Mhm.
So we hope that you guys have watched it and are just hearing wanting to watch us to hear us talk about it and not necessarily recant the whole thing because trust me, it's very long and there's just it's very dense. It's very dense with info and shots and character developments and flashbacks and
We couldn't do it enough justice, is what he said.
no, yeah, definitely not. And so I think that one thing I could say is that this movie does a really good job about tailoring all of the threads together. So at the end, you don't feel like any of them were confusing. I
Unlike the
would
two movies I just mentioned too.
right, and I was a little bit worried too because there was I think at the sort of the point where he's on his way to London, we start to get flashbacks, and I was like, oh no, am I
It's
not
over.
I just didn't know if I was going to be able to like keep track of like which time we're in, but I think they did that really well
Yeah.
in keeping it as clear as possible so you know and you don't get confused.
Yeah. I think the best element of using the flashbacks, or the best times where the element of using the flashbacks came in very handy, when they started using it during the interrogation,
Right.
where it's like, okay, well, where were you during this period of time? And he just stare off, and then you'd get that scene, or that would be enacted in front of you.
Yes.
That is that's almost like a storybook element. Chapter
Mhm.
1, chapter 2 type of a deal.
Right. Yeah, this it's kind of cool the way this story works that way because it leaves you with it starts off with a whole bunch of mystery. Who's this man? What is he going for? What is he trying to do? What are his plans?
Whitey
Um,
shave.
Whitey shave, yeah. You know, they saw him with a beard and they drew his
Right.
picture with a beard, so he had to take the beard off. I get it.
Right.
But no, I mean, like it's all about the mystery of like what is he doing, what is he trying to do, and I like that the movie sort of unwraps the character as you go along, and like you said, each question that you have as an audience person is sort of dived into in the
Mhm.
movie, and you almost spend like 30 minutes on each sort of question as to the
Mhm.
motivation of what he's doing,
For
which I
sure.
thought was enthralling, especially when we get to the end, right?
Right. And just in reference, not just to the end, but in general, something I think is a great implementation that is, of course, not seen in Western art in general, because that's not how we view community, is the kinship of land. Like, if we're from the same land, we're from the same place, you know, this is my sister, this is my brother, auntie, uncle, mom, of course, is sacred for your mother, father is sacred for your father, or just people who you view as your, I guess, people above you. But how that was consistently used to the point of which, unless it was defined that there was a relationship, you just assume that everyone is kin and there
Mm.
is nothing going on. And very different from Western movies where you just assume that everybody, once they step on screen, they about to get busy.
Right. Yeah. No, that's true, and I think that there's a an element of familiarity that we're not necessarily used to. I know that my wife has a similar sort of thing in her culture where they call their elders, either auntie or grandma,
Mhm.
things like that. Just as like it's
Term
a
of endearment.
collective thing, term of
Yeah.
endearment. It's a term of respect. It's like it's closer than hey, you stranger, right? It's
Right.
like we are, yeah, like you said, we're a kin, a sort
Yeah.
of kin to each other. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think
I've known you my
that's
whole
nice.
life.
And,
Yeah.
and really the impact of that is felt at the end of the movie. And I think that, man, it was a very brave, not brave, but it was a bold choice to not give you that until the very end of the movie, because I think there was a lot of opportunity to sort of spill that out throughout the movie that maybe somebody who might have been overzealous could have put to the point of exhaustion.
Yeah.
I think that the way they did it at the end, where you have this like 30-40 minute
My
scene,
gosh. Yeah.
I mean, good Lord, you really I think that gives you the emotional impact that you need for the character.
Yeah.
Um,
You start living it with them.
right, right. For I'm going to get his full name right. His name is Ram Muhammad Singh Azad. That was his real name, but he went by Sher Singh. He also went by Udham Singh, Udham Singh,
Frank
Uday
Brazil.
Singh, Frank Brazil, which is a good one.
I did look up SARDAR UDHAM, just trying to figure out like, is there a significance behind the name? Udam is a name, so of course, that has a meaning like any other word. But Sardar was like chief,
Okay,
so like to know him as a revolutionary.
like a figurehead. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Like I think that's why when it would bring up Bhagat Singh, for him it was like, listen, you don't talk about like not just a brother, but you don't talk about the person who made me who I am. And it's like, do you? And I like how he did that to the officer when he asked, "What were you doing when you were 23?" And
Mm-hmm.
he, oh, I was da da da, and all these marvelous things. And it's like and he's looking at him like, you don't realize how easy your life was. Like you could never compare to a man like this. Please
Right.
do not do that. Like
Right.
it's the utmost disrespect. And I actually like you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what is his name? Bhagat?
Yeah, Bhagat Singh, I believe it
Bhagat
was.
Singh. Yeah. He was the sort of role model or sort of who Udam looked up to, I guess
Hmm.
we would say. And yeah, he was 23 and he was basically hung as a revolutionary I believe it was in India. But yeah, very impactful. And I think that it was good that sort of, yeah. I don't know. There's like a level to the character where he remains very mysterious for so much of the movie, and then he starts talking, and that's when you get that like, oh, now we get to know a little bit more about you. And I think that that's an interesting sort of direction to take the character.
Yeah. I like the way he did that only because it took me a minute to identify it, but it was a very similar to inclemency, right? Until he found a level of respect for the personnel, we
Mm-hmm.
have nothing to discuss. I'm not giving you any information, and you're gonna kill me anyway. So what does it really matter?
Right,
But
right.
so for like Udam, I'm sorry, I started thinking about clemency. For Udam, he had no reason to divulge anything to the men who were there to torture him because nothing he said to them would matter. They only wanted some terrorist affiliation or
Yeah,
like,
they wanted the network. Yeah.
they wanted nothing about why or the how.
And his
Whereas,
network was the HSRA.
mhm,
Yeah.
correct. Well, that's his origin. That's where he got his start. I would say at this point he's definitely a standalone, and I
Oh,
don't
yeah,
think
they
just
basically say so because their
yeah.
whole group is annihilated. Yeah.
Right, right. And I think that is why even with the I don't know if they have a name for themselves in England or in London, excuse me, but the group of the elders that he was around,
Mm,
and they took his gun, they kind of were scolding him, but they knew him to be a defined man. If he believed and stood on something, you better believe it was getting done.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that for me was some of the more pivotal scenes. It told me that he was the new generation. Like he's aware of the old ways. He was
Yeah.
raised in the old ways, but that don't work.
But he wants the revolution. He wants it. He wants it. And it's interesting is that the way they made this movie, it might actually be better if you watch it a second time after seeing the last 40 minutes, because I think it would color the character a lot more, because you really don't get the entire, like so the massacre at, I think it's Amherst or
Armister.
no, I'm sorry.
Amrister?
Amritsar.
Amristar.
Amritsar.
Yeah, I don't have it written down, so I couldn't read it.
I believe that's what it's. Yes, it's Amritsar. Sorry, Amritsar.
Amritsar.
The massacre there. That gets like alluded to and talked about a little bit in the movie. So you kind of think like, oh, this is this vague thing that the character is using as a motivation. I didn't necessarily think as an audience member we were going to be witnessing that whole thing, because it's in the past and we're focusing on this character now. But I really like that they did that, because now it sort of informs the character prior to knowing that information.
Right. You know what, that's actually exactly what it does. So they had already, they alluded to the massacre, as you said, and all these things that had spurned him. We never actually find out why he's in prison at the beginning of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I was under the impression that he was a part of something that had occurred then, like during the massacre, and that's like what happened to certain people who didn't get killed. So to find out later about how the massacre played out and his role in the aftermath, that is also a very revealing. It's very telling. I couldn't imagine in America seeing any one human being, less knowing multiple, even for their own family, running through a sea of dead bodies to save anybody who has a chance.
Right. Well, and I think they say in the court scene when he's being tried, which I think is a really good representation of what a crap show the legal system can be.
Oh my God. We'll get to that.
But I think they say that like he was in jail because he punched a guy at a bar.
Oh yeah, bar
because
fight.
it was like, so he was just tired of all of these Indian people that weren't caring enough, and I guess he got upset that there were so many at the bar that were sort of apathetic to what happened.
No, I think he punched the other Indian guy. I think that was in England, and he was locked up in India.
Oh,
I think that was a bar in England. Oh, because I believe they called it a pub.
I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong then. Yeah, I thought it was. I think he said something about when he was priorly imprisoned, it was for some sort of bar fight thing.
Right. I'm saying it's. Yeah, actually, he did on trial. You just said that and it just registered. He did say that while he was on trial. And they asked him, have you ever been in prison for a criminal offense? And he's like, it wasn't criminal.
Right. Yeah. Because he was upset that there was like an Indian man that didn't really care about what just happened, I think. Right. But yeah, I like there's a whole lot to dig into. Needless to say, this, I'm going to use one of his names, Udham Singh. Again, he goes by many names, and you see in the movie how many passports he has.
Many faces.
A man of many faces, absolutely. I did like his journey and him going in through Russia and Siberia to Western Europe and eventually London. I do like the concept that he had to sort of like lay low. Like the elders tell him, like, you just got here, you can't do stuff. Like there's a war going on. World War II is about to kick off, and you need to be cool, man. So he lays low for like 6 years.
Right. And I do like how during this portion of World War II, they're not really defined about which side England was on.
Oh yeah, well of course, because there wasn't an official side yet.
Oh, you know what I mean, though.
Yes, sir. I do, yeah, and I think that that was an interesting sort of. That's why I find that era sort of fascinating. You have again this rise of fascism with Mussolini and Hitler, but then you also have the Soviet sort of communism, social revolution, workers of the world unite sort of thing.
Which is why Russia stated they couldn't help the movement,
Right.
even though the entire Soviet Union had their back, but they couldn't help because they had to prep for World War II.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And they had to go fight the fascists. But yeah, I mean, so I think that there's an interesting play, especially in that time, because it seems like those two ideologies just sort of utilized the downtrodden to to for their own aims, but the aims ended up being catastrophic for a lot of people, unfortunately.
Right.
Not,
I think.
yeah.
Well, I think this movie. There was a scene where what's his name? O'Weary?
Oh, the old guy.
Yeah, the old guy that he killed.
O'Dwyer.
O'Dwyer, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Where he's working for O'Dwyer, and O'Dwyer is telling him about, would you kill one to save 10 or to
Right.
save hundreds? And essentially he's trying to validate to himself that had he not killed or had the masses killed, they would have overrun England or or London. The crown would have
The
been
British Empire would have fallen.
taken. Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
What's so interesting to me about that is him not realizing those actions, that thought, that's what bred his own death.
Mm-hmm.
He created the man, I'm not even gonna say the monster. He created the man that was bred in the sheep, in the lamb, as he called himself, that
Mm-hmm.
was Udham before the massacre.
Yes. Yes.
You know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it is sort of a just desserts. And I think it's, the rhetoric that surrounds that sort of imperialism is so, it's so piercing. It's almost jarring when you have to hear it, but it's the truth. Like that's what they thought back in the day,
Yeah.
like that's the way they saw the world, that the British Empire needs to bring the world to heel, like, geez.
Right.
How many times have we heard that one before?
I'd rather not say.
I know, right? But yeah, no, I mean, like, it's very striking when you see that sort of acted out, because that happened for over 100 years during the occupation. So, yeah, I do like that there is that poetry of O'Dwyer being sort of being ended at the hands of something that he created himself.
Right. Right. And again, as you said, as we stated, with that really being the introduction of the movie, being the beginning. So after that takes place, I enjoyed the Old Testament style door to door. I'm looking like it shows a level of panic in a regime when you're willing to violate the citizens. And that level of panic to me is always a defining it's always a defining moment in revolution, because you're literally building the army. The more doors you knock on, you're literally just creating more people who are going to hear this idea later and go, you know what, they violated me too, what are we doing about this?
Yeah. Authoritarianism always breeds more sort of like violence, like it just doesn't work. People rebel against that. They resist it
hard
yeah
and fast. And this movie did a very good job of showing, to me, in my opinion, the twists and turns of the human psyche when you're being manipulated to that level. You saw the even during the brigade, the firing brigade, you saw that a good portion of those military and soldiers were Indian, fighting for, and that's why we even see them mention how many Indians died while fighting for the British in World Wars I and World War II. But
I
even
mean, they
within,
even bragged about using the Indians as frontline soldiers, basically. Like,
exactly.
we were able to increase our army so much by using these other people. It's like, oh geez Louise, man, brutal. Yeah.
And most of those people are under the impression that they're joining your side because you're going to have their back when their time comes. the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Well, the enemy of my enemy that's also my enemy is still my enemy. Um, and I think those are the kind of things that, again, with the movies alone, we have to make sure we keep these type of movies alive. That's why I'm really glad that it was sent to us. And what I mean by that is also there were just certain networking connections and things that I don't know if people would ever think about. Um, you have a communist party in pretty much every country. You
Mhm.
have a fascist party in pretty much every country. You have all of these beliefs. So what is to make people think that you're not gonna, when you traverse the plains and you go different places and you're traveling, you're
Mhm.
gonna find the people who believe in what you believe in, and then that's how these networks are created. And I think that that was, as much as it was shown, it wasn't explored deeply enough, in my opinion, by the intelligence officers as they were trying to get their information. Um, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think the whole thing really to me is just sort of like this exploration in authoritarianism. You have the authority of the British Empire and imperialism. You have the specter of fascism looming in the background. Some would say the authoritarianism of socialism and communism. I don't think that this movie is trying to make those statements because I think Udham Singh was probably a socialist, um, which isn't necessarily bad when you're under a sort of authoritarian system because it's sort of like an antidote to that. So I can't really make any commentary about the rise in socialism and populism when people are under sort of like a hard
Dictator rule.
authoritarianism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
But
should
I
most of
think
all
that
inflicted because they didn't get off the streets fast enough.
right, exactly, and I think that's kind of an interesting commentary about just the role of authority, the role of violence, the role of um, enforcing your will on other people, and
Mhm.
also the people that get stomped on by all of these ideas.
And you know what's funny is everything that is the definition between the Indian people and the crown in this particular movie is exactly what Bhagat Singh was teaching, which is the difference between in that little scene, which is
Hmm.
the difference between a revolutionary and a terrorist.
Right,
Like there is no economic gain, there is no fear, there is only information and the message. And even if you don't
right.
believe in the message, we're just here to give you a message. That's it.
Right. I do. I think that that's probably a good way of distinguishing. I think the true history is probably a little bit grayer than that.
Oh, it always.
So I understand that this is telling a story from a particular lens, so we don't necessarily need to go into that ground.
Right.
But
We didn't mention that.
but
I thought that was a great way. Sometimes movies need disclaimers. I think the disclaimer at the beginning of this movie was perfect because
mm,
it explained all of the different like speculative discussions, different levels of media, newspaper articles, news coverage. All of these things were used to create to navigate the story or to create this storyline. And I
mhm.
thought that was probably the best way for them to kind of get off the hook with any liberties they took and or things that they left out.
Yes, absolutely. I think if I read correctly, um, this was Shujit Sirkar had this idea when he was in college, but it in the 90s, but it took him like 2 decades to
Get it done.
research this,
No,
to
I
get
could
all of
imagine.
the information and get the story together. So,
Yeah, I could imagine. I saw another version of this story, which only came out maybe a year or two before this one. Um, I'm not sure exactly what sector of film it would fall into, but it let me know immediately this isn't a foreign topic. And seeing as how we're right past the 100-year mark for this type of this information, I'm also thinking that perhaps it has a statute of limitations. We don't know how India works with their or how London or England works with their news and propaganda. So I was thinking this could either be just that clearly it's that impactful to the history, but I was thinking it could either be something that's prevalent right now and what's going on over there, or there's a statute of limitations on when they could and couldn't cover it. And now that they're actually able to cover it, that could be what took him so long to be able to research is the information was being hidden. Because the end of the movie even states that there's still information and files on him that are classified and unable to be
Right.
obtained.
Yeah, I would assume that there's probably sensitive information that was withheld. That would have probably made it hard for somebody who's trying to gather the story to get as much information as they could. I don't know. I mean, I would think that the statute of limitations on sort of classified information is around 70 years, but UK probably does things differently.
I think it's 88.
And maybe I'm not sure. But yeah, I mean, I think it shows that the director, again, let me get his name correct, Shujit Sircar. It shows that he did really want to get into details, and he really wanted to get the sort of political climate of what was going on back then, and I think he did that really well. I think who also does this really well, and this movie kind of reminded me a little bit of this series, is Peaky Blinders. Peaky Blinders deals with a lot of these same elements of, the rise of socialism and the rise of fascism, and the industrialization of England and stuff like that. And I think this movie does a very good job at sort of capturing the essence of what crazy times they were, especially if you think like this is just right out of the Depression, the Great Depression. And, the economy, I think they even say in this movie, like the economy is starting to come back a little bit. But then you have this rise of fascism that comes out of those times too. So a really rich era of political history to choose from. Oh, are you okay? Do you have gremlins? I think you're on mute. He's got gremlins, guys. Don't worry. I got him too. If you hear a little hissing, I'm very sorry about that. I've got to go get a new wire for my microphone because apparently my microphone loves just destroying wires, or maybe it's me. Might be me. But now Keelan is still on mute, but that should be okay. He's working it out. It's all right. But yeah, I really love this movie a lot. I thought it was great. And I'm sure Keelan's going to have something to say once he's back. So
How about now?
They're good. There you go. You're back.
Jeez, I don't know what that is. What? Oh, yeah. No, yeah, absolutely. The way that I don't want to say chronology, because again, I don't know the actual history to say if it was in order, but the sequence of events from them letting us know, okay, this is this time frame, and then we're 6 years later. Altogether, we're 9 years later. At the end, we find out from the very beginning of everything, which is the end of the movie, all the way to the beginning of the movie, which is the end of the scenario. It's 21 years. And if you put that together and you go back and you start looking at some historical events through those times, he was hanged in 1940. It was 1933 when he shot O'Dwyer. I know for a fact 1933, I believe, is a very significant year in history. And I want to say 1940 is the year after Hitler was killed.
And the World War II ended in 45.
45.
So
okay.
40 would have been just right. The entrance of sort of like close to the entrance. I think 42. I'm not even, don't even want to get into this because my history is not accurate, but yes, early 40s is when Britain gets into the Second World War. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's more so what I was trying to say. Like, I think that's around the time
they're this like, would probably be around
let's get our problems.
When the Nazi Party is starting to expand.
Right. And so they're probably like, all right, let's dead our problems over here. We got some things they're going to be a part of.
Yeah. And I thought that was an interesting with the whole Soviet Union being like, yeah, we would love to support you guys, but we got our own problems over here.
Yeah. Science.
Sorry.
But I think that's also a burden of everybody's not, again, having to say it, everybody's not as fortunate as America to get the speculative information and or falsified information occasionally as well, a lot of times, about other countries and what they're going through and what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely. I think that also would change like how you're moving around and what alliances you're looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you got to think that I believe, and don't quote me, but I believe Mr. Adolf was Times Person of the Year
Oh yeah, yeah.
before, you know.
I don't have to quote you. I'll quote
Okay.
Times. They did
Okay.
it.
Just making sure. Just making sure I wasn't misinformed or something. But yeah, I mean, so that tells you like the idea of perception, the idea of lenses through countries as well.
Mhm.
And this is a story that I think is interesting for me as a Western audience person to see, because it's not through the sort of Western lens. If it was through the Western lens, it would be some like MI5 agent trying to stop the assassination of O'Dwyer, right?
And it would only be an hour and 20 minutes.
It would be an hour and 20 minutes. There'd be tons of explosions, and he would have stopped the assassin. You know,
Oh,
like,
and we'll find out that O'Dwyer was a cold mofo back in his day.
right.
He just was getting old and got caught slipping.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so it really is interesting to be able to see through the lens of, you know, the British filmmakers, the British people, or not the British, sorry, the Indian filmmakers and the Indian people against sort of the British imperialism.
Maybe British Indian. It's been some years. You never know.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just meant because I mixed up the subject and the object. So.
Oh, got it. Got it.
Yeah. But yeah, so I mean, really, this movie is about, you know, after the assassination, through the interrogation processes and the torture process. Let's be clear, and the dude was getting tortured. We find out more about him as a person, where he's been through these 6 years. He does a little stint in Russia. He talks to the Soviets. He comes back. And he's kind of laying low. He works for O'Dwyer for a little while, and has a moment that he could have shot him clean and chooses not to. Yeah, actually two. But I like that he addresses it, because he wants it to be a politically revolutionary act
and not be on the workers.
Right. Because it would have been just reduced to an aggravated worker if he had shot him in the forest or at the house or something like that.
Also, something that was very pivotal about him telling the lawyer about that and getting to that point is we hear and see the way O'Dwyer talks about the Indian people. And it all starts with him simply going, you know, where were you on April of 1919? And he's like, I remember where you were. And it's like, you came to start shit. Like, this is literally what you're doing. Like, this is what you want.
Well, it's also a little bit of his guilt, I think, too.
I think it was
guilty about that. Yeah,
I think the whole movie, while we see it eating him up, and he's making these excuses to himself. It's not really him trying to validate it to anyone else. He's trying to still convince himself he did the right thing.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's very prevalent from. Udham had left the room. He was not trying to participate, and you heard O'Dwyer go, "They deserved it," and he kind of leans back like, "Fuck you say?" But like for real, like, "Sir, oh, you need something?" It's like, "They deserved it. You don't understand," and it's like, "Oh, okay." Like, I had to pick up your dead body, sir. I don't think I'm the guy that you want to tell how much I don't understand.
Yeah, right.
But what I also gathered from that was how much Udham could learn from him by simply allowing him to continue to speak. Because we all know that there are people who don't like you, but how often do you get to actually hear from that person's mouth why?
Yeah. I think it was a little bit too of like Udham trying to suss out whether this guy was, you know, sort of regretful or just evil. And I think that the conversation between them really kind of solidifies to Udham that like, oh, this guy doesn't even feel really bad about it. And if he does, he's definitely not going to admit it to me. So what's the difference?
If he feels bad, it's because he might have found out an English man or a woman or two was in the crowd as well.
Right. Right. Exactly. Yeah, because he certainly didn't care about women and children. That's for sure.
And keeping in mind that it seems as if that entire massacre was spurned on by the death of 5 British citizens. 5.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the whole curfew and everything come from. And it was never disclosed, at least I didn't catch, what it was that caused the death of these 5 British men.
They just said social unrest, which, is another sort of narrative that's, I think, is sort of conveniently maybe pushing some things aside. Perhaps. It's just, who knows?
You giving us a curfew, you got guns slinging around, and social unrest because this guy over here is talking to me like he done lost his mind. And the officer got his back. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna get him when he ain't looking.
Well, it also just highlights how incredibly, like, even logistically silly Britain was for thinking that it could ever, like, hold a country. I mean, it's surprising. I mean, through brutality did they hold it for as long as they did. But especially a country is so far away from the actual little tiny island of Britain. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
Not trying to cause no problems, man.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I get you. But no, I mean, like, it's very shocking, and it's very easy to sort of like relate to Udham's struggle, especially once you get to the end. It's like, holy moly, no wonder he was so committed. No wonder he was so ardent. Who wouldn't be?
For sure. I initially was okay. So there were portions of this movie where I was waiting for them to turn him into the big bad. It was either I was waiting for them to turn him into the big bad, or I was waiting for the other shoe to drop in his role in assisting England, right? Because again, Western movies, that's just always those kind of twists. And again, realizing how deep this went and understanding through the entire movie, I don't think they needed. If this were a Western film, they wouldn't have needed to give us a reason, because they had given us every emotional step through it, aside from the actual source, the actual foundation, the root of the cause. And it wasn't. I think something else they wanted us to believe was it was just him losing Ramesh, or was that no?
Rashma, yeah.
Ramesh, that's a guy name. What am I talking about? But Rashma, at first it was like I thought it was gonna get to like, oh, he lost his lady, or he lost the lady he loved at minimum, and it was like he's gonna go crazy. And it's like, no, he saw literally everyone he knew growing up around his village, around his town, kids, mothers, babies, everybody. Just how do you even survive that mentally? Let no one become the source of
course, yeah,
relief for others.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, you get to see him, and I'm sorry, what was her name? Rashma. Yeah, I thought they were those flashbacks were really sweet, actually. Of him before his sort of revolutionary persona, the thing, who he was before the terrible act that made him sort of a revolutionary.
Even a different look in his eye.
Yeah, and I think you're right. The movie does make you think that he's going to find Rashma and like hold her in his arms and weep and all of that stuff. But it takes a turn, and it's like, no, all he can do is try to save the people who are still alive. And he goes in looking for Rashma, but he spends his entire night saving people who are alive. Anybody that might be making a noise, he's trying to take out of there.
He even saves the pregnant lady's life by covering her mouth and getting her down to a level of which they couldn't tell they were alive.
Right. Yeah. And that was incredibly brutal, dude. Like, they did not hold back from showing you every sort of almost
of blood,
every person being shot. Yeah.
Head shot, back shot, kids getting shot.
kids getting shot. That's something you don't see in Western
Yeah,
movies.
the little girl getting her chest blown out. Listen,
Yeah.
that one took me out a little bit. I had to kind of look away, pause. I'm like, I don't know if I could.
Oof.
Okay, now I can get through this. But and here's the crazy thing. That reminds me of like it. Unfortunately, it's not like I haven't seen that level of blood before, but not in that context. But what it made me think of, there are people who that is a life they've had to live time and time again, at the hands of people I'm not even gonna mention right now. But what you have to consider, even for someone to put that into their movie, into their art, it has to be it has to be almost as prevalent as, you know, school shootings over here. You know, like you
Yeah,
just
I believe it was something like 1,300 people. So it was
20,000, I thought.
Oh, hold on. We gotta let's not get this wrong.
Yeah, because
We had a lot of very engaging commenters in RRR who were very happy to let us know what we got right and what we got wrong about the movie. So I'm trying to be as precise as possible.
Yeah, it says, I have it here. The massacre at Armister took place in 20,000. What was it? 20,000 nonviolent protesters were fired upon without warning.
20,000 or 2,000?
20,000.
Holy shit! Holy shoot! Yeah, I'm trying to look for the exact because there was something that I saw because I looked up the Wikipedia because I was trying to make sure again I was being as precise as possible. Yeah, let's see. Open to a crowd of crowd of 20,000 peaceful protesters. It doesn't say how many were actually killed.
That says on the movie I look it up here on Wikipedia.
Yeah.
Death toll between 379 and 1,000, injured 1,500.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So just incredibly terrible carnage, which this movie does not shy away from. So if you guys have sensitivities, be very forewarned about that. You will. I mean, it wants you to feel those feelings, and I think it does a really good job about doing that. Like it dwells in that 24-hour period or 12-hour period, really, for about 30 to 40 minutes, I think.
Yeah,
it's really just watching Udham just go back and forth with a wooden trolley and picking people up and trying to save their lives. And it's pretty heart-wrenching. Some people don't make it, and I don't even think he ever sees Rashma.
I don't think so either.
Yeah,
I don't think he ever finds it.
It makes it even more heartbreaking. And yeah, so I think that the emotional impact of those last 30 or 40 minutes really just make you look at the prior 2 hours ish in a totally different light. It totally paints Udham as a completely different person, because up until that point you don't see the pre-revolutionary Udham, and this is what creates the revolutionary, and he's just a guy who's in love with a girl and lived in a village and didn't even really want to be at that rally. The only reason he survived is because he didn't go.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Well, and I think that's the taking of the cake right there, is him not going is that's the part that was meant to happen.
And I think his reservation to commit the act was that he would have been dead had he been there anyways. And so now he's just singularly minded about retribution.
Yeah. And I mean, hey, again, Dwyer was willing to kill all of these people to stop, what did Dwyer say? Not Dwyer,
Dreyer. Dreyer's the general.
Yeah. What did he say at the end? Is it quiet out there?
I like that Udham visits his tombstone. I wonder if he committed suicide.
That is very curious, because I'm not sure either, but I noticed that too, and it took me a minute to put together whose tombstone he had visited.
Because he didn't seem like he was incredibly happy with what he just had to do.
And here's the thing. none of them seemed incredibly happy with anything they had to do, whether it was Dyer, O'Dwyer, Udham. No one except for, I guess that would be the king.
Yes, and even the king didn't want to because the king was like, "Is England going to have to give up India?" And
Yeah.
this is like, I think the movie does a really good job about showing how absurd India or England's like obsession with holding India was. Even after years and years of it not working and it going poorly, they're just like, "No, we can't give up India." Like, dude, give it up, man. The people have spoken. Like,
Right.
yeah,
Loudly.
loudly. Yeah.
Um,
But yeah, so I thought the movie did a good job about that type of commentary too, which is
mhm.
again interesting. Um, guys, we appreciate that you're watching this, and I just want to take a second to acknowledge all of you out there. Thank you so much for watching. Again, this is our sort of foray into Indian film. RRR was our first movie that we watched, and we really enjoyed it. And this will be the second one, and I'm sure we're going to be going forward. We're going to be watching a lot more. I already have kind of a list of Indian films I want to watch just because I find them refreshing. They have something that I feel like we're lacking a little bit right now in our big Hollywood studios.
Yeah.
I think smaller studios like A24 are doing a great job, but I think we're sort of also missing some elements because I wanted to also point out I really loved the high saturation at the beginning. There were a lot of really vibrant colors. And I think I liked also that they use different filters. Like they use a very heavy blue filter in London to sort of signify changing the temperatures, changing the locations, and all of that stuff. So I think that the camera work was good too. The acting was done really well. And the story was really, really compelling. So I'm looking forward to more in the Indian film vein. We have to, I think we made a disclaimer in one of our last videos. We called RRR Bollywood. It is not Bollywood. We made the distinction. It is technically Tollywood. Yeah. And going forward, we're just going to say Indian cinema. So just so we don't mess up any distinctions, because again, we're very new to all of this stuff.
I do want to state that I spoke to an Indian friend of mine and I told them that we made that mistake.
Yeah.
She was crying laughing. And I was like, okay, so it's like a joke. Like nobody's mad. She's like, no, you're just idiots. And I was like, oh, right. Yeah, we can live with that.
Yeah. We definitely are. We were definitely right, exactly. But going forward, we will make this distinction. And I'm actually really I'm really excited to explore films from other countries. I think that there are probably a lot that we're missing, and we just don't really get them brought to our forefront here. So if there's anything that you guys like that you think we might enjoy as well, please let us know in the comments. We would absolutely love to. Like, we watched this movie because you guys commented on it and we really enjoyed it. So again, thanks for the recommendations, and keep them coming, because we will always take those recommendations into mind when we pick our future films to review.
Yes, indeed. Okay, so let's touch on a couple more things before we head out. The courtroom scene was so indicative of what I think the judicial system is like here. That whole process, where at a certain point you're pretty much, it's illegal for you to speak based on what the guy on the desk has said. I mean, yes, I'm going to say it that way, the guy on the desk. And then the people who are there to report, whether it's a stenographer or media personnel, they're basically held in some form of, they don't have rights because they're workers, I guess. I don't know.
They get put under gag order.
There you go, gag order. They get put under gag order. And it's like, I don't think this is okay.
It's definitely not okay. But that was the British Empire. That's what they were so afraid that Udham's action, and they even say it. They're like, it's inevitable that his action is going to be perceived as an act of revolution. Yep. So, I mean, like, he kind of achieved what he was going for, even if the British Empire was trying to stifle the information about it. Everybody knew.
Oh, yeah. It was very clear. And even as far as them trying to cease his hunger strike by forcing a tube down his throat. and
Hmm.
feed him. Like, dude, that doesn't stop the hunger strike. That just makes you guys worse than you were before.
It's going to be a lot of work for you.
Mhm.
I think that they might have done a little bit better at explaining that he was in prison for like 9 years. I didn't
He was
know
in
how long he
prison
was in
for
prison.
4 years. Wait, for the first time?
No, I thought that he was arrested. He was executed in 40. Wasn't he arrested in? Oh, well, he was arrested
Yeah, it
in
was like
34.
34. You're right. It's like
34.
6
So he's
years.
okay. It was around 6 years. Sorry.
6 years.
I had thought it would have been a lot longer.
Oh yeah, no, I
Still,
had it down at 6 years too. That's why I was like, "Oh wait, let's do it. Make sure
yeah, yeah.
I wrote the right thing." But yeah, it was that the feeding of the tube. For me, it was like this is the once we got to the court case, everything kind of turned on its head
Hmm.
because then it was like, and here's what I also enjoyed that internal struggle of, so is he right?
Yeah. And you see
Like,
that with the constable. The constable's like, he didn't consider it on as a killer. Even though he did what he did. He
right,
technically did
not a
assassinate
killer.
somebody. But I think he does a good job about, and the actor does a great job about sort of in that courtroom scene about like sort of turning the hypocrisy around and like telling them, you guys get out of my country.
Mhm.
Um, I think, yeah, the gentleman, again, I'm going to have to look his name up. Vicky
Mhm.
Cawshaw.
Mhm.
Yeah, Cawshaw. He did a really great job. I thought that scene of him and the outburst in the courtroom is just, yeah, it was very well done.
Mhm. So yeah, after all of that, and he goes through everything. I also enjoy when he's talking with his lawyer or the constable, and they're having that discussion of um, they have that discussion of his foundations, which is a very very big thing for me. Is the found people who reared you, the people who helped you grow to who you are, and he speaks of his teacher who told him, basically validating his actions, and his teacher who told him, youth is for um
Youth is a gift of God.
yeah, youth is a gift, and
Hmm.
you must give it meaning, or else you're wasting it. And how he intends to ask when he gets to the skies or to heaven or however, whomever phrases that. Um, his desire to ask him, did he make meaningful use out of his youth, or
Hmm.
did he waste it? I think living with any level of purpose to where you believe on the back end you're going to get an answer to that, how can you die unhappy at that point? It doesn't matter what anybody thinks or tries to do to you.
I also think it's a little bit sad too, right? Because he talks about that, his teacher telling him, youth is a gift given to you by God.
Mhm.
And then we see that his youth is kind of robbed from him by this massacre.
True.
And he becomes this sort of sole purpose person that didn't get to have the girl. Him and Ramsha didn't get to have that, friends forever thing where she's like, I'm never getting married. And he's like, oh, really?
Yeah,
Um, so he didn't
that
get to
was
have, yeah, it was cute. And he didn't get to have his normal life. It was taken away from him. And so I think that
mhm.
it was really kind of a sad moment when he says that, because he's lamenting the youth that he lost.
Do you think you would enjoy if someone made a rendition where Reshma and he stays together and he doesn't become an activist?
Well, I mean, it wouldn't be the same story, that's for
It
sure.
definitely would
But
not, but thinking, a person who had still those same beliefs,
I thought they were
you know.
sweet together.
Mhm.
I think also like what it shows is how people get radicalized.
Yeah,
Like there was
1,000%.
no indication that I'm sorry, I'm going to get his full name this time because this is pre-revolution. Ram Mohammed Singh Azad. There was
Mhm.
no indication that he was a revolutionary before
Mhm.
the massacre.
Yeah.
You know, so it really does show like how radicalization can happen. You put these people through incredible traumatic experiences, and then you expect them to be happy,
Yeah.
and yeah, like
Yeah, everybody's not going to just sit and let you continue to do it. Some people are willing to
right.
lay their life down, and rightfully so. I think no, I'm not going to say that out loud. But yeah, I don't think uh it is considered from those in power how what they do to create what they view as a problem, and how the people below them who are who feel oppressed, how they view these things that they consider a problem.
Mm. Yeah, definitely always a disconnect between the ruling class and the sort of the working class, for sure.
I enjoyed the consistency of him wanting to make sure that the message is passed, that or even the question being consistently asked of, is that, am I a murderer or am I a revolutionary? Was that a protest or a murder based on your law?
Right.
Like, let's define this based upon the action, not based upon the speculation.
Right. Yeah. And certainly, right, like he wouldn't have gone and killed O'Dwyer if that massacre hadn't started. You know what I mean? So like it really is just in response to this terrible thing that happens. And he sort of has to just be that agent of retribution or correction, revolution.
Right. All of the above. And didn't he do the same thing that law enforcement tries to do when they want to take something out? He aimed for the head.
Yeah.
Who was in charge? Who made that final call? All right, cool.
Who
You
made
gotta
the
go.
choice? Right.
Now, if you go, everybody below you, they gonna understand what happened here.
Right.
Now change your ways.
Yeah. I thought it was pretty sad, like at the end, you don't necessarily, you definitely feel bad for him, and yeah, it's a pretty sad story. It's a pretty sad story, but I think an important sort of poignant story.
Yeah, no, for sure. I again, and actually, no, not again, because I don't think I've said this yet. But if I have not said it, I'm definitely planning on watching this again to try to get the full scope. I definitely watched it this time as a movie. I am gonna watch it the next time as a documentary.
Yeah, I think it does bid a second viewing just because not knowing the history of this incident and the history of this person, I was not sure where things were going. But with the context of everything that happens towards the end of the movie, again, I think it really does. It will probably shed a new light on the character that we see prior to that. So
Agreed.
I think it definitely warrants a second viewing just to sort of take it in and with the knowledge. Yeah, man. Anything else? Anything else that we wanted to bring up?
The Winston Churchill wartime
Yeah.
policies that also were a part of these times. There were 2.6 million. I know I said two something, but the exact number that we were given at the end of the movie was 2.6 million Indians that died fighting for Britain. And I think what is most interesting to me is these are only two of the terrible massacres that occurred to the Indian peoples that are listed here. But both of these happen within a specific time frame, which is literally about 100 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's scary.
Not long ago at all. That's for sure.
Yeah, there are people still alive who went through these things.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we like to look back at history as if it were much farther away than it actually is. And as if we're not maybe reliving some elements of it currently.
Oh my God.
But like I think that these types of movies are important, and I really enjoyed it. I don't know if I have anything else that I want to add.
I don't not towards the movie, but with you saying that last statement, it did make me just question. I wonder what is the equivalent for each culture, not just Indians, but for each culture. I'm now curious, what is their civil rights movement? What is every culture's civil rights movement? I'm very interested now.
I think it has to do with the dynamics of occupying forces, though, too. So if your culture didn't have an occupying force, there might not be that sort of revolutionary struggle.
Fair.
And yeah, so like I think that homogenized societies don't tend to have this type of strife, but it was very apparent that the occupying force of Britain was causing so many problems.
We literally just watched two movies within the last month that let us know how bad.
Right. And so, yeah, I think that's these types of climates and these types of things that happen are really only specific to when the people that are being governed don't feel like they're being represented. And I think that that's the biggest part. And so if you're in a homogenized society, you don't really feel a need to push against the government because you feel represented in it. But if you're not feeling representative of the people governing you, then that's where, you know, things go crazy. And of course, if you have some random islands in Western Europe governing you, you know, like from thousands of miles away.
Not even the largest of the islands.
No, exactly. So, you know, like, yeah, it makes sense that there would things would fall apart and that Britain wouldn't be able to, because you can't rule people without an iron fist. And this is what this movie talks about, you know, like, and that's the horror of authoritarianism, is that it always ends up with bloodshed. It always ends up in death. And that's awful, you know.
Yeah.
And you know,
Just
like
don't let people see to conquer.
Yeah. And it just made me think, you know, like how many people have given their lives and how many people have been taken, you know, from the world too early for the concept of freedom. You know,
Which is unfortunate that it's still just a concept, isn't it?
yes. And who knows if it'll ever be real and solid, but yeah. But it's something within us that is like a spark, an eternal spark. And when we're put in systems that oppress us and repress us, we have this need to break out of that cage.
Oh yeah. No, yeah. I can't say it any better, and I definitely couldn't add anything that would make it sound any deeper, because that is just the meat and bones of it.
Certainly, man. Well, do you have anything else that you wanted to bring up or add before we wrap this up?
I enjoyed this movie. I did come to terms with, when I find a mental gap so far since I watched the movie, when I find a mental gap and I'm not going on a tangent about something in the movie, I have learned to call it quits there and just let it breathe. I have not stopped talking about this movie since I watched it. So thank you guys for this suggestion, honestly. But from there, that's it for me.
Sweet. Well, let's get into our ratings. The verdict. What did we think? Sardar Udham. What do you think, Keelan? Do you want to do it
I have
first?
no problem going first on this one.
Right.
I know I like to play the back and forth finagle game with the numbers,
Yeah.
but this time I am not doing that. I am almost tempted to give this a 10, but I'm going to give this a 9 for now, only because I want to watch it twice. And I'm sure after the second watch, I'll come back and when we do our next revamp show, this will get a 10.
Right.
But right now, this is going to get a 9. I teared up. I cheered. I learned. I was excited. I was sad. I was confused. The range was there. And I was impressed. So I don't know what else I can ask for in a film, honestly. Yeah, it's going to be a 9 for me.
Sweet. Yeah. I'm feeling the 9 range. I think I might say 8.5 only because I wasn't like overly moved. I was incredibly disturbed at the end, and I was very sort of melancholy about the entirety of the message, which I think it does very well. But as far as like incredible emotion, it didn't hit that way for me. So I think an 8.5 is good. I'm not going to ding it too much. I think this is a great movie, and I'll probably watch it again too, because there are some things that I want to look at with the knowledge that I have now. But yeah, I think 8.5, it's a solid movie. The cinematography is good. I love that they play with color saturation, especially within like the sort of the filming of India. They're very vibrant hues of color. And then you sort of bring the sort of dreary hues of London. I think that the story is well paced. I think it's edited well, and there's a lot of flashbacks, but it doesn't make you confused, which I thought was a good feat, because jumping and cutting around can be kind of confusing to the audience. So yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed this one. 8.5 for me.
Yes, indeed. I
yes,
think
indeed.
altogether that gives us like a 8.7.
8.75. Yeah,
somewhere.
8.75-ish. Yeah. I personally liked RRR a little bit more, but not by much, because I think this is a great film. So
Yeah, you know, with you saying that,
different type of film too. So
and that's what I was gonna say. I'm like, I'll do that comparison. I think I prefer these type of movies over the RRR types, because I can find an RRR type of film easier here, on the West.
right.
Whereas, I actually would have to go and look for a SARDAR UDHAM, especially in shit in the 2000s in general, probably.
Mm. Yeah, that's fair. Definitely. And this is just two guys that are making our introduction into Indian film. So we really know very little.
Right.
But yeah, looking forward to reviewing some more Indian films in the future. And whatever you guys suggest as well, we're always open to suggestions. You know, we sometimes lament that we have to go to the staples of the big sort of Hollywood productions. And we've been very tired. I don't know if you've caught our reviews of big Hollywood productions lately, but we've been very tired of them. And so it's just been very refreshing to sort of take smaller scale movies and just good stories and sort of some attention and explore those, because we're burnt out on Disney. So
Yeah, something we get actually get excited about.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Something that makes me feel like cinema is going to make it, like, you know, that
Right.
the movies are going to be okay. But yeah, is anything else, Keelan?
These movies don't feel like they were written at somebody's dinner table. That is all.
All right, that's fair enough. Yeah, and I think we're done, guys. I think that's going to be it for us for tonight. Thank you so much for tuning in with us. We really appreciate all of you out there. We're very grateful to anybody who decides to leave us a watch and a comment. We made this channel just to sort of, you know, keep in touch as friends and talk and give ourselves the opportunity to talk crap about movies together. And we're just very flattered that you enjoy that. So if you do, please give us a thumbs up and a subscription to our YouTube page. It would really help us out. We're trying to build that audience. And we just got to, I think, 35 subscribers. So we're doing pretty darn good, guys. Thank you so much. We really appreciate all of that out there. I can't do it without you and without your input. So thank you guys out there. We really appreciate it. We have a podcast network that we do. It's called Thinkering Talks, and it's on Facebook. But each of us has a YouTube channel as well. We start our week off on Tuesday nights with Keelan. He's got a podcast called If Numbers Could Talk. It's on Tuesday nights at 8:30 p.m. He's on Spotify, Facebook, and YouTube at If Numbers Could Talk. Wednesdays and Sundays here at the Screen Time Continuum every Wednesday, Sunday at 8:30 p.m. We will be back on Wednesday. I forget which day it is. We'll be back on Wednesday with you guys with something fun to review at Screen Time Continuum on Facebook, on YouTube. Tuesdays and Thursdays, Dijon the Mustard, a friend of our podcast group, has a Twitch channel called Strawberries and Coffee. Be sure to go check him out on Twitch, Strawberries and Coffee, Tuesdays and Thursday nights at 10:30 p.m. Friday nights is Exofathom with myself, Ayla, and Mike. And we have a Facebook page, a YouTube page. We're also on Rumble, Verbal, and Odyssey, all at Exofathom. Go check us out. Saturday morning between 10 a.m. and 12, you got This Married Moment with Keelan and Bobby. They do that every Saturday morning between 10 a.m. and 12 noon. And they are on Facebook, YouTube, and Spotify at This Married Moment.
That's right.
And then you're back here on Sunday with us, mugging and talking about movies and critiquing things for which we have no credentials. We thank you so much for taking this trip through the Screen Time Continuum with us. For Screen Time Continuum, I am Nick.
And I am Keelan.
Good night.
Thanks a lot, guys. For the record, I don't think we need credentials. It's 2022. Passion jobs, right?
Papers.
Passion
We
jobs.
don't need no stinking papers.